What did your time in the Obama administration teach you about how power really works in America?
How long do we have?
We got time.
Don't we miss Obama? Some people were bothered because it took him an hour to get from one end of the hall to the next end. It didn't matter what you did. You could be mopping the floors. He was gonna stop and talk to you. And just that level of personhood taught me that it is possible to be a good human as a person in power.
How did you get into politics and how did you transition out? Tanika Boyd is a former political strategist who now tells stories through fashion, motherhood, and culture. From the policy rooms of Washington, D.C. to the streets of Brooklyn, Tanika has mastered the art of blending substance with style, proving that influence isn't about reach, it's about resonance.
I just poured my heart into influencing, but I didn't think I could make money doing it. I liked it, but I thought it was gonna be a hobby. And when my manager called and said, hey, we can get you some money, and she showed me the money and the money started coming in and the bank started, I said, we are on to the next.
So I'm curious what inspired you to start sharing, but also do you have boundaries around it? Like what you share and don't share?
There's this whole thing around like foundationally black Americans, FBAs, this whole thing. It makes it seem like we're in competition with each other. I wanna get your thoughts on that.
The foundational people are crazy. Let's just start there.
We see the tweets, and every single day what we see is we love Afropolitan. This podcast is underrated. This is the best podcast ever. But the problem is 82% of you are not subscribers, but I know you guys are watching. So I need you to click the subscribe button so you can join the Afropolitan family. Thank you. Tanika. So someone is going to click into your specific episode on YouTube or listen to it on the way to work. They may be working out. They may be even winding down from a long day. So the first thing I want you to tell our audience is your current thoughts around the state of being an influencer.
She dives right in. I think it's so multi-layered. First of all, I think it's going to continue to be a multi-billion-dollar business. I think everyone is influencing in their own way. I actually believe that everyone should try to monetize their following, no matter what they do in their full-time jobs and their day jobs. So I'm of that belief that we should democratize it in that way. I think the challenge is becoming people are beginning to tell the stories around the ways that people are making money, how people are leveraging their following. And it is slowly becoming this bastardization of influencing. And you have people with millions of followers, especially on TikTok. And they are taking brand deals for $100, $200. And so then you have brands coming back and saying, oh, well, this person took this, and what does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with me? That's not my right. You know what I'm saying? So I think there has to be some regulation going on. And I think there are also international, global brands that have to start to pay attention more to other markets outside of the United States, because that's where so much of the influence is coming and growing, and start paying people at the same rates that they're paying US content creators. So I think it's gonna grow. I think there is room for everyone, but even within the spectrum of everyone, I think there still needs to be some regulation.
Yeah, and the thing I like about you is you've literally lived a very colorful life, right? You have been a strategist, an activist, an influencer, you're a mother, you're a wife, right? So how do you constantly reinvent yourself?
I don't know if I reinvent myself so much as I'm just growing. I've embraced aging. Not the physical part of it, but you know what I'm saying? There is so much beauty that comes from just living. Like people are like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And they're like 21 years old. I'm like, well, you have to live. Once you live, you will realize that there are things that are no longer for you. It was a great part of your life. It doesn't have to be bitter, but you move on, right? Like in my motherhood journey right now, my daughter is 18 years old, and it's so challenging because she is grown and she's out of the house, but it's a natural evolution. And so I just look at the things that interest me and my next phases in life as natural evolutions. It's like I am naturally moving on to the next thing.
Yeah. And actually, I want to kind of go deeper on this motherhood thing, because you've been talking about lately, you're an empty nester, but at a young age. Can you talk about the realities of that? Because I feel like I'm gonna be like the old mom.
No,
right?
no.
The old parents.
No, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. When I was growing up, there was only two ways to mother, right? There were rarely mothers like me. If you were a young mother, you were 16, you were 17, you were 18, and you were almost destined for a life of poverty, for lack of better words, right? It's multi-generational. It would take you at least 20 years to pull yourself out of poverty, right? And so that was the reality growing up in the 80s and the 90s. And then there was this aspirational life, the Claire Huxtables on TV, and it was, you went on to become a professional. You spent your 20s living in a big city, traveling, doing all these things, and then you settled down, you had a husband, you waited a few years, and then you had one or two kids. That was the way that it was done. But I very rarely saw the women like the Claire Huxtable in real life. And when I had my daughter at 20 years old, I was 21. I always say 20. I got pregnant at 20. The year after 19. So, but it was just so like, I didn't fully understand. I didn't know. I was like, what is this? And I knew I wanted to be a professional. I knew I wanted to work in politics. I knew I wanted all these things. I was married to my college sweetheart, but I still didn't see other women like me. And so I had to go be the woman that I wanted to be just at the age that I was. There was nothing I could do. I still wanted to be a professional. I still wanted to see the world. I still wanted to have all these experiences. I still wanted to pull myself out of poverty. And I happened to do it with a child. But in New York City now, all of my friends my daughter is grown now. She's off to college. I had a friend whose baby is about to turn 1 this week. My other girlfriend just had a baby in March. I mean, that's professional women. You spend so much of your 20s and almost all of your 30s trying to grow your resume and trying to build your profession. And so, I mean, that's just the way that it is. And so I am on the early side of my friend group. The person that's closest to my child is 5.
Wow.
What's the trade-off that's made there? Because I think this is a conversation I know that from the men's side we're having as well, where you're saying, okay, so the whole thing is go out there, go to school, get a job, make enough money to be able to take care of a family. A lot of men keep saying things like, I don't feel like I'm ready financially. But you're in a situation where you had the child at 20 and now... 21. And she's 18 now, but you still have time to like live your life and still be young and still be in the mix. Whereas some people are like 40 thinking about having their first child now. So by the time their child is 18, they're like what? Almost 58 or almost 60. So these are real time trade-offs that I don't think people think about in a longer time zone. When you look back at it right now, what are the trade-offs that people should think about when they're making these decisions though?
So I will tell you what I told my daughter. Like I wouldn't recommend my own daughter, having a child at my age. First of all, that's in 2 or 3 years. Do I look like somebody's grandma? Absolutely not. But right, like, so I wouldn't recommend that. I think we are not, and we hopefully will not be the 50s and 60s of our parents' generation.
Okay.
With technology, with white collar working, like with education, with our ability to access global markets, to access skincare, to access Botox, like we've just, no, really.
Yeah, it's facts.
We have really been able to live a long and full life. I mean, look at the celebrities. Like Morris Chestnut is in his 50s. Like Sanaa Lathan. Like it is, I mean, it is a beautiful thing. And it's actually what I know, if I'm being honest, about my professional circles. It is what I know of people, that people are just 40 years old when they have their first child. Yeah. That is the way it is professionally. And some of that is capitalism, right? You are trying to hedge your bet and make a way in this capitalist society. And you have to do that by working, by making sure you grow professionally. I haven't seen people like have detrimental challenge. I think it stops your ability to have 5 and 6 kids, but my God, isn't that a good thing? Right. But like, it's like, yes, if you start at 40, I can't see you wanting to go till 52, and so that is a trade-off. But the good thing is what I've noticed in my personal circle is you have so much more money. You have so much more patience. You don't have time to go back, right? And you have yourself together. You have time to invest in the child. You have time to pay for college. It's just better overall, in my opinion.
What did your time in the Obama administration teach you about how power really works in America?
How long do we have?
We got time.
We got time. Relax.
My goodness. Don't we miss Obama? Hey, at this time. Hey, I wish, I have so many wishes for him. But I do wish him peace. And he is in his retirement as he thinks about all the things that he is doing and how he's still contributing to our society in powerful ways. But I was so young. First of all, I was breastfeeding on the campaign trail. And we had, at that point, we'd never worked for a candidate who ever won. So when they said he won, I was like, who? Right? And then it was like, then you're off to Washington, and you're in your 20s and you're just like, what's going on? And it was just so confusing, but it gave me so much hope. I was just full of tenacity and ambition. I'm so grateful that I got to witness him in person, in real life, to walk through the halls of the White House, and he took his time. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he took his time. Some people were bothered because it took him an hour to get from one end of the hall to the next end. But he talked to every person walking. It didn't matter what you did. You could be mopping the floors. He was going to stop and talk to you, and he was going to ask you about your child. And just that level of personhood, just that amount of humanity taught me that it is possible to be a good human as a person in power. Now, I haven't seen it replicated again, but it was just, it's like you're witnessing one of these like Nelson Mandela greats. And you don't know it when you're on the campaign trail. You don't know it. But when you see, you're like, especially now I reflect on it. I'm like, wow, I will never see that again in my lifetime.
And I want you to talk about that you led grassroots campaigns and now you're leading communities. Like what are the building blocks that you use for these campaigns and how did you put it into community now?
My goodness. She's come with the hard one. It's very thought-provoking. I've never really thought about this before. I think I'm a warm person. I love to be in community with people. I love to find ways to relate to people. And these are all things that I grew up with, just growing up in a family like that. That was how you were able to cross just like class differences. That was just how you were able to navigate in the world, was to find things in common with people, move through the world with kindness and warmth and boundaries. But and I also learned that through community organizing and working in grassroots community. And it helps me with my content creating because I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed this, but people are so used to, they think that we just are ignoring them. Mm. So when you respond, they're so grateful. I'm like, hey, only 100 people like my post today. I saw you.
I got time.
Yeah, I got time. And thank you for having time. And people are just so grateful that you want to be in community with them. But isn't that the best part?
Yeah.
That's the best part. When people tell you their story and they relate to you, and I don't know, to me, that's the best part.
And I'm curious, how did you get into politics? Was this something you always knew you wanted to do? And how did you transition out?
This is the family business, Politics is the family business. My family, I grew up in an African-American family, and historically it's always been about fighting systems and fighting American systems of oppression, making sure that you are active for the next generation. My grandfather used to say, you'll probably never see it in your lifetime, but it is your duty to fight, right? So that your grandkids may inherit a better day. And so I like to think of it as the family business. I was compelled by President Obama. I was trying to figure out ways to make money, but I was led by my heart. So I was like, okay. And I think when you're so young, so many young people, they join campaigns, but they work for a person that loses. And I didn't know my first round out, I was going to work for the winning guy. And like one of the best of all time. I mean, I was just shocked. And so I had to obviously ride that wave. I didn't leave easy. I will say that. I left DC in the first administration because it was time to make money. Can I be honest?
Be honest.
It was time to make money. And I needed to make money. My parents didn't send me to college to just go be led by my heart always. They wanted me to find my heart in things, but not always. They were like, okay, this is the next generation. We want to make sure that our kids have a foundation and they can pay their own way. And so we moved to New York. And, I took a job. I was doing similar work, but it was nonprofit work. But it was, it paid well. And so I just rode that all the way up. And really, it wasn't until the pandemic where I was at home. I was bored. My niece wanted to be on TikTok. My daughter wanted to be on TikTok. So we had a shared account. Because I was like, oh, we can be on TikTok because my friends are on Instagram. But I would be embarrassed if I posted on TikTok. So we were just doing the little, the dances. And then I did an outfit video and it blew up. I said, oh, what is this? Who are these people? And so I was just having so much fun. But it kind of spilled over to my work where I would get on these Zoom calls and, my assistant, my boss, they would be like, oh, I liked your outfit. So I was getting a little embarrassed. You know how, I liked the separation. I was getting a little embarrassed. But it was stressing me out. I was working on police reform. And I was working on police reform the day that George Floyd died.
Wow.
For the National ACLU. And my therapist was like, I don't know what you're going to do, but you can't do this anymore. And I thought I was just going to do it as a hobby. I took a sabbatical. I was crying my eyes out because I didn't want to leave. But I was so stressed out. I couldn't keep going on. And I just poured my heart into influencing, but I didn't think I could make money doing it. I liked it, but I thought it was going to be a hobby. And when my manager called and said, hey, we can get you some money, and she showed me the money and the money started coming in and the bank started, I said, goodbye. Bye-bye. We are on to the next.
Etcha, remember that time I walked into a bank, I'm not going to give the name, and I asked them for $1,000 and they told me no, they cannot withdraw any dollar from me. And I was so upset. And I just remember asking everybody, how can I solve this issue? And I'm so happy that I finally have VBAN to finally solve this issue for me.
The thing is, you should be able to have access to your money anywhere in the world when you get paid, right? So I'm grateful we have VBAN as a sponsor for the Afropolitan podcast. With VBAN, you're able to get paid in foreign currencies, whether it's pounds, USD, euros, and you can actually spend it in local currency as well. Now, you're also able to get a virtual card, which you can use to spend in and pay for services across the world, right? So I'm grateful to have VBAN as a sponsor.
You can download it on the Apple or Google Play Store. And remember, when you sign up, you use Afropolitan so they know you came from this podcast.
I wanted to, because this was around, obviously, the whole Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd. What were your thoughts and reflections on it? And the reason why I want to get your perspective is with this podcast, we have so many people around the world who watch it. A lot of them are based in Africa. They don't really sometimes understand the systems that in America of racism and what that looks like. Could you help break it down for our audience? Like, what was that period like? What is the historical context? We do have time, but basically like educate our audience as to what's going on in America that they might not necessarily have insight to, especially because, sometimes we do have the divisions between Africans and African Americans. So giving that context that enables them to understand what's going on.
Yeah, so a lot of folks, especially when I'm on the continent, they'll ask me in complimentary ways, like, oh, where are you from? If I say America, they're like, oh, this one. She claims America, but her parents are from Nigeria. She doesn't want to tell me. I'm like, no, my parents are from America. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, 10 generations. And because of colonialism, right, there's a lack of historical understanding of African Americans, the ethnicity in America. And I would also say because of oppression in America and anti-African sentiment in America and xenophobia, there's a lack of understanding about what happens on the continent, right? To be fair. But African Americans are, they came to the United States in the 16, 17, 1800s via slavery, right? They snatched us from West Africa and took us to the Americas, all across the Americas. But the Black American population is really unique in that we were proximate to our white enslavers. Whereas in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Brazil, Brazil is a little bit closer, but in the Caribbean, they weren't, right? Like they were 90% of the population because the white people couldn't survive in Jamaica.
The climate, yeah.
Right, the climate. But we were always proximate to our enslavers. And, after slavery, there was Jim Crow, which was segregation. They drank at this water fountain, we drank at that water fountain. We went to these schools, they went to that schools. Very similar to South African apartheid. Very, very similar to South African apartheid. But Black Americans, like South Africans, fought really hard to get out of it, right? Like some would say violently. Martin Luther King came along, it was peacefully, but fight for everything. Access to voting, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, access to education, not just to be integrated into schools with white people, but for funding and also to be able to access college. And so what you have in America, you very rarely you find a Black American with a parent and a grandparent who went to college because it wasn't that long ago. And so what we have in our current, and I'm being very short, but what we have in our current context is so much of the oppression exists now in systemic discrimination. Not so much as cosmetic, though that cosmetic exists, right? We have more colorism cosmetically. They will elevate Black people, but a lot of times it's lighter skinned Black people who are proximate to whiteness, all of these things, specifically women. But it's more systemic, like, you have to have a PhD in order to get the same job as a white man who has a high school degree, or, you have to have 10 years worth of work experience. So it's more systemic. And the biggest challenge, I would say, is the police. In the United States, and people are always shocked, the people are armed, the police is armed, the government is armed, everyone has a gun. And the police use guns, and there is this perception that every Black person is armed, and every Black person is dangerous. And Black people are inherently violent. And because Black people are violent, they are owed violence back to them. And because you have this history of protest in the United States, you have this history of rioting sometimes amongst Black people. When something doesn't happen the way that we want it to happen, systemically, institutionally, we're fighting for access for our rights. There was this explosion in 2020, but it wasn't just 2020, right? We had Trayvon Martin before that. Yep. We had other incidents, even in Minneapolis, we had Mike Brown in St. Louis. Yep. Every 2 or 3 years, there's always this very public display of violence. A lot of people don't realize how large the Black population in the United States is either, right? It's like 33 million people, right? And it's huge. And 10% are also of West African, like one of their parents or both of their parents are immigrated from West Africa. And you have these two sides converging, the police who are violent and then the people who protest. And so you have this public display. We always say, if it bleeds, it leads, meaning if I see you bleeding, it's probably going to enrage me. Of George Floyd, there was a knee on his neck. They suffocated him. They killed him. It was on video. It was public. We were all at home. We didn't have anything to do. CNN is playing this nonstop. You're getting enraged. You're like, this is racism. They only killed him because he's Black. All of these things. And we don't have the analysis that some in the African diaspora have, which is really based on class, right? When you have absence of race as a primary deterrent or primary determinant of who you are, a lot of times we see class. Yeah. And we have that, but it's not as strong as race. Like, we will get rid of you if you decide you become a rich Black person, but you don't want to be Black, and now you're Blasian, and now you're biracial, and you gotta go. Now we don't like you. And so Black is that is your leading identity. Almost always, even as a woman, being Black is your leading identity. Even if you're gay, being Black is your leading identity. So it's almost like this duty, and people think we had a meeting or something. They're like, did they have a meeting? Why did they all come out at the same time? It's just cultural, right? And so we came out, we protested, the white people joined. But I would say it was very similar to the SARS movement here in Nigeria, if I'm being honest with you. While the racial component was different.
And SARS.
In SARS, it was very similar because it was the same brutality. I would argue that it was a little more brutal here in Nigeria. Yeah. but it was the same sentiment, right? It was the motivation. I went to London at a time where they were protesting outside of the Nigerian embassy. So I actually got to witness the largest Black Lives Matter protest outside of the United States. And it was driven by solidarity for Black Americans around the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States, and also motivated by INSARS in Nigeria, because it was very similar. You had people, you had kidnappings in Chicago from police departments, you had violence, you had people being extorted, you have all of these similarities. And I just think it was a beautiful display, if I may, of the African diaspora and like how we continue to come together. We saw this in the 90s with Black Americans and South Africans. We saw this in the 70s with Ghanaians when they were leading the Pan-African movement. We saw this in the 60s with Jamaicans and Ethiopians. So I like to believe that while we nitpick, when you speak plainly to people, they will understand.
Yeah.
They will understand.
The thing too that I hope this particular recording helps dispel, because there's this whole thing around like foundationally Black Americans, FBAs, this whole thing. And for me, it's like there's a level of ignorance in it, because when you go back and look into the history, you're talking about Black Panther Party. They had membership across the globe. You're talking about they were going as places as far as China. They had African allies as well. So this whole narrative where it makes it seem like we're in competition with each other is something that I would love for us to dispel. I want to get your thoughts on that.
The foundational people are crazy. Let's just start there. It is an act of desperation to call yourself anything other than what you are. Why are you always looking to be called something else? We are a rich culture. We are a beautiful culture. And when you have a high cultural self-esteem, then you go anywhere in the world, and it is not reductive to be in proximity to anyone else. I never feel small in Nigeria. When I leave Nigeria, I even feel more full. You know what I'm saying? Because I can see so many similarities. I can embrace the Nigerian national culture, but also all the ethnicities within it for its each individual beauty. It makes me feel fuller. Yeah. Do you understand? Yeah. And when you have that high, just like cultural self-esteem, right? It just makes it so much easier. So I don't subscribe to this whole foundational Black American, the Hotep, the Sulan, the flag, all this. What's wrong with being African American? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to take the African out of it because you're anti-African, because you're xenophobic. So there has to be some element of it. Now, I will say this. In my personal life, I have almost only seen this online. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because as a New Yorker, I obviously know it exists. I will say I do think it is phasing out with the globalization of like so many cultural elements, with Afrobeats, with fashion. Almost always, there have almost always been people who have immigrated from the continent of Africa to the United States. Legal immigration. Right, almost at the end of when we were transitioning from being African to African American, a distinct culture with elements of the entire West African culture experience. Then you had immigration. And like you said, always in the civil rights movement, not just from West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, even North Africa, also parts of the Caribbean, South America, a part of being African American, how I grew up, was always Pan-African. Yeah. That was always the experience. That was the beauty of being African American, was that it was a global and a Pan-African experience. And so this new stuff, I don't know nothing about stuff. That. Yeah, see, I don't subscribe to that. I just ignore, I block, and I move on.
You protect your peace.
Yeah, I protect my peace, and they come for me too.
What would you say?
They say I'm African, pick me.
African pick me.
God has picked me. God has picked me. What?
It's crazy.
I think it's like it's like the white boys in the basements and then they get mad and they go to the gun store and now we can't go to the grocery store because they want to shoot it up. I think this is the equivalent.
Yeah.
I think they're online and they're searching for meaning and there's a lack of education.
Yeah.
See me, I grew up poor. I didn't grow up dumb. You see what I'm saying? My parents, just because they didn't have money didn't mean they didn't understand the value of education. And so I always had a sense of identity. I always believed that I belonged to a global Black community. I've always felt flattered. I always do the flattering. I will always find something, to relate. I think it's a product of bots.
Yeah. No, it probably is too. It probably is. What would you say is the nuance, and you touched on this a little bit, between race and classism, right? Because in America, like I think for me, moving from Nigeria, it was the first time I was being introduced to race. I didn't understand, like I was the first Black kid in my white high school. They were talking to me about race the whole way. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. This was Dublin, California.
Yeah, so like in the Bay Area.
I was in the Bay Area. So that was, trust me, it was as white as it could get. And then I remember the first time, and then I came back to Nigeria, and I hadn't been back to Nigeria in a while. I then got introduced to classism at an age where I understood what that looked like. Mm-hmm. And this is a nuance that so many people don't know unless they cross through these portals enough times. What is the nuance you're seeing why does America do its best to downplay classism, even though we know it exists, and increase race, but over in places like maybe in the UK or in Nigeria, for example, race is not necessarily a determining factor, and then class is the thing. What do you think is the nuance between these two dichotomies?
I think because the United States was built on slavery, right? And, its entire capital was based on a Black body, right? And so there was no other way. It was ingrained in the fabric of America, right? And no one is willing to let it go, right? For any reason. And, the very idea of class in America is based on race, right? You could be the richest Black person to walk the earth, but because you are Black, because that is something that you can't supersede. And in America, they needed something that can't be superseded. You can't change it. You can change almost anything, but you can't change the color of your skin, right? To the point that even if you try to change it for your children, so if you say, oh, I'm going to marry a white man so that my kids will be lighter and then they said, even if your grandmother 8 generations was Black, you're Black.
Yeah, the one drop rule.
Yeah, the one drop rule, because that's how committed America is to racism, right? That's how committed it is baked in the very fabric. Obviously, there are things that have changed, and so I wouldn't say there isn't classism, and there are Black people who subscribe to this idea of classism, specifically this idea that because I have more money than you, I'm better than you. I'm inherently a better human being than you, or also because you are poor, it is because of your own personal failing. Right? I do know some poor folks that have failed. I have some cousins that have made some decisions. You know what I'm saying? They have made, but overwhelmingly it is because of systems, right? And so there is a critique of even Black people who are wealthy, who don't acknowledge that what's going on. But I think on the continent, it's always shocking to me sometimes when I hear people say they don't understand, or they didn't know they were Black. You didn't say this, but I have a friend who just said this. She said, well, I didn't know I was Black until I came to America.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, I don't know what's worse, slavery or colonialism, right? And I just think about how colonized the whole of Africa, Ethiopia says no, but the whole of Africa was colonized up until the 60s.
Yeah.
South Africa faced apartheid up until
the 90s.
The 90s, right? And so I'm like, how could you not know? But then I thought to myself, well, it's interpersonal interactions. It's like white people in Nigeria feel like the weather. They're there, they're controlling something, but they're not affecting your day-to-day life. If you go outside and it rains, you have an umbrella, you know how to control it. And so it's a different ball game. But what I've seen present when there's an absence of the race dynamic is almost always this classism, this class divide, this elitism, which I think it's hard because I know for me growing up, when your parents tell you to place value on these things and then you have them, how am I not supposed to feel big? I have my Manolo Blahniks on. How am I not supposed to feel big? You know what I'm saying? It's very, you have to check it every day. But the dynamic is so interesting.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the whole DEI and wokeism backlash, right? So you have a situation now where these things are things where when I first moved to America and I heard woke, I was like, oh, it's a good thing to be woke because you're not asleep, right? Like you woke.
Hello, tell the people.
And when you heard DEI, you're like, oh, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Who don't want to be diverse? Who don't want to have equity? And who doesn't want to be included? Like, what are the things that? So I've seen the shift where these words have gone from, being things that were positive to now being co-opted to be like all these negative stereotypes. I do want to get your thoughts on, because I tell Chika this all the time. I do feel like we had an opportunity, like a 2-year window after George Floyd, and a lot of it got misused, in my opinion, with outrage politics, where people are like, okay, oh, they said this, oh my God, like cancel them. And I'm like, look, we should have just been building systems and institutions and leveraging these resources for something more, because when the benevolence of the good white man stops and it switches, we see what that looks like, right? So what are your thoughts on that whole period and what's also happening right now?
I think it's just white lash. It's a white backlash to Obama, really.
Yeah.
And seeing like Black women specifically, but also Black men get into these CEO roles, it was past due. They were due that CEO role. They were due that COO. They were due, you know what I'm saying? And so, again, it's these basement dwellers. I have no respect. They're in the basement. They're online. What they have is the privilege of majority, and that's fading fast. It's fading fast, but they have the privilege of being the majority, and so they're exercising their rights, and they're pushing back on this idea that Black people are getting ahead, Black people are elevating, Black people have money, I don't have money. White people in America have been the largest recipients of food stamps and government money since the beginning of government money till now. It's always been that way. It has always been that way. They've had their outsized share, always. But there continues to be a backlash around any Black person that is making waves or making movement. We've had all these brands, we had all these companies come out and say Black Lives Matter, and they're the first companies that are turning around after they've put Black businesses in their stores, after they've made millionaires. Now they want us to go broke. Now they want us to pull us off the shelves and do these things. But I agree with you. I think there needs to be systems in place. We need to be stronger with our boycott. We need to be stronger with our dollars. If Black Americans were isolated from the larger economy, our gross domestic product would be the 13th largest in the world. Nobody spends like Black people.
Yeah.
Their hair, their nails, their shoes, their clothes, the things we're going to do the things. Even if we don't have it, we're going to find our way to it. And I think with strategy and systems, there are ways that we can make this more sustainable, but they will always fight back.
Yeah.
They will always fight back.
And actually, I want to transition because I think this also aligns is your love for travel, right? Because I also feel like Black people, especially in America, we don't travel as much as we should.
Yeah.
And I feel like it kind of warps our thoughts around how we see the world. Like I know for me at a very early age, I traveled, I saw things. So I know the world is much bigger than America. So I'm curious, what has travel done for you? And, personally, I'm inspired that from a very early stage, you've been traveling with your daughter. I know for me, is I'm gonna have that one child, so she can be on my back everywhere, and that's it. Just look at you now.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, let's get this straight.
On record.
On record.
On record. So I just want you to talk to me about that journey.
You know what? I wanted my daughter, I wanted to be a very specific kind of mother. I wanted to be a woman of the world. I wanted to be deeply just engulfed with myself. Honestly, I wanted to be self-possessed. I said, I'm going to have all the things. I'm going to have the furs. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. I'm going to be well-traveled. I'm going to be well-read. I'm going to be well-loved. That's who I'm going to be. And I became her. And a part of that was making sure that my daughter saw the world. And she's been to over 60 countries, but it was challenging. And now she's rotten. She is so rotten. She boards that plane, and if we make her go right to economy, she's like,
"What's going on?
Did I get upgraded? Do you have money? Do you have money? Get to the back. Get to the back of the plane. It's only 3 hours. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm warning you now. That's the downside. They will come to expect a very specific standard. But for me, travel has been a part of my global education. It's also brought me closer to myself. It's brought me closer to my identity as a Black person in the world. It's allowed me to not put limitations on myself as a woman. It's allowed me to see myself as privileged, and to whom much is given, much is required. Yeah. What does it mean to be able to move through the world in this way with a blue passport, to go to these countries and people just welcome me. When I come to Nigeria, they just welcome me. I just get stuff sent to my hotel. Everybody's checking on me. Every guy's got a guy that they know that can get you into the thing, and Chica's getting you into the thing. And it's just it just makes me feel whole when I'm traveling. Yes, it gives me rest. Yes, I love the ocean. Yes, I love to see a zebra in South Africa. Yes, I love to be in rural Kenya. Yes to all these experiences. But I would say above all, it has brought me closer to myself. Yeah. And it has made me feel more like a citizen of the world. And it's made me feel more comfortable in my skin. And it's made me feel like there's actually, I have more in common with people than I think I've ever imagined.
And actually, what I'm more curious about is what made you start to travel more to Africa? Because I feel like there's a lot of people, specifically our Black people, they'll tell you, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Europe, I've been,
Miami.
I've been to all these things. And then when you ask them, have you been to Kenya? They looking at you puzzled. So what made you come to the continent?
So my parents were poor. They were not stupid, right? And so my parents, I have to give credit to them. They never tried to scare me, They always, my dad's like, you're in Paris and Africa hasn't seen you yet. My goodness. So it was also by shame.
Yeah.
A little bit, it was a little bit by shame. And I will say in my brain, I read a book when I was in the 3rd grade called Journey to Joburg. And I fell in love with the characters. It was a thin book, but I fell in love with Johannesburg. And so I wanted to go to Johannesburg. I took my husband that was 14 years ago now, and we fell in love, and we really just branched out from there. I will say I had come to West Africa, so like Senegal, but during the year of return, Black people, we like to be welcomed. We like to be like, oh, fuss, and they're gonna roll out the red carpet. So when the Congressional Black Caucus in the United States declared 400-year anniversary of the first slave ship to the Americas that really started what is now African American culture and identity, and Ghana said, we want you to come back. And they did the year of the return. People have problems with the year of return. I'm here to tell you, not me. I love it.
I was there.
And it was brilliant. Was it not the most brilliant
like
tourism
Wakanda
campaign?
It was smart.
Yeah. It was so smart. It was so well done. And then they had all these celebrities and ambassadors. Yep. I booked my ticket. I said, I won't have FOMO. I will be there. And I think that's when I was like, oh, every year. I think also the third thing is just having friends, right? Some African Americans that grew up in just African American communities. Now, the thing about Nigerians is the same with Jamaicans. There can be Black Americans in the middle of the country. If they don't know 2 other ethnicities, they know Nigerian and they know Jamaican. So if you say you're from the Caribbean, they're going to say, oh, Jamaica. If they say you're from Africa, they're going to say, oh, Nigeria. Mm-hmm. You two are very big in energy and attitude. So people know that much. But I think growing up also, my best friend was from the Congo. My other best friend was from Nigeria. I used to go to the house and eat and it's just like, and so you grow up your whole life and they're saying they're going back home and they're saying they're going to take you. And then you go to Ghana and they see you in Ghana and they say, oh, yeah. And you say, you haven't taken me yet. And so that's really how it began. And I just think, again, the proximity, the familiarity. But you have Black Americans who have this perpetual and ongoing fear of the African continent, to a lesser extent, but also to Asia, even though now it's Phuket and Dubai. But it is such a nationalistic view. Not all Americans. I know so many Black Americans. I met your friend who is here.
Yes, CC.
I just automatically asked her. I said, "Oh, where are you from?" And she was like, "America." I said, "Oh, no, where are your parents from?" So now I'm acting the same. So I said, "No, where are your parents?" She said, "No, I'm American, like Black American." I said, "Oh, well, me too." I said, "It's two of us." I said, "Wow." She said, "Yeah, it's two of us." So we just looked at each other like, "Huh?" She was like, "I was going to ask you the same thing. Where are you from?" So I was like, "Well, that's." So we see it, we know it. We need to open the gateway to Nigeria. We have there's some I'm saying we already. I need my citizenship, but there's some infrastructure
That's hard
challenges.
to get a citizen. Nigeria,
I've heard.
It's weird. We are very strict. We're like,
I've heard it.
You can get one in Benin before.
The people said 10 years time at least. That's what they've told me.
It's crazy.
But I think once they see more people come.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic.
Yeah,
Once they
me
see
too.
more people come to the African continent and visiting, I think social media has done wonders.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so I think more people are coming. But then there are some people who like, I don't want to come. Well, stay at home.
Yeah, when I was there, when I first moved, because I moved at 15 from Nigeria to the US, I remember being like one of the people who would try and explain to people like, oh, what's going on in Africa? And then, we had social media, Instagram, Snapchat. And when they moved from watching a CNN or watching some of these other two saying, oh, I was watching Eche Snap and I'm seeing Africa through his lens, or I was watching his Instagram stories and I'm seeing Africa through his lens. It was such a powerful thing because up until then, I would always tell my friends who are African Americans, like when you're in Africa, the images you get about African Americans is dreads and sagging pants and jail. And they make it seem like there's no other culture but that, right?
Yeah.
And then if it's hip hop, it's just gangster music. And then again, there's no explanation of the nuances of the culture. But then when I was also in America, the images you see of Africa is, $1 a day, mosquitoes on the head, the whole thing. So I would say to them, like, it feels like to me, like when we're both talking to each other, there's a white man in the middle interpreting for both of us.
And there it is.
And we have to figure out a way to remove that white man from the middle, which is in the form of the media, and tell our own stories that show to us, oh, we can actually relate with one another, So that's something I feel like I'm hoping the podcast that we do helps people really unlock, because I think I can't remember how many times I was just shocked when I would hear a question. I'm like, wait, where did you get that from? Why would you even think that? So when we did the year of return and we were able to bring so many people to Ghana, you could feel like them feeling full. Like you said, they're like, wow, so this is what it feels. It felt like Wakanda that December. Like it's still such a magical moment, because after that December, I think COVID was the next year.
It will never be the same.
Yeah, no, it's never been the same
It
since.
will never be the same.
It was beautiful.
I agree. I actually want to transition into you coming for Lagos Fashion Week, right? And so I want you to tell me from your viewpoint, what do you see that others may not see? Like right now, someone's watching this podcast. What do you want to tell them about Lagos Fashion Week?
They say every fashion week, New York Fashion Week, London, Paris, Milan, all these fashion weeks, even Seoul and Korea, have like very distinct identities. And I like to say that Lagos Fashion Week is the soul of Fashion Week. It is the creative hub. It is the creative art. First of all, there's so many designers who are so young. And, they say globally that, Africa is the future and, so much of the youth population live on the African continent. But when I come to Lagos Fashion Week, I just see imagination.
Yeah.
Where it is lacking in the West, sometimes it is so driven by capitalism and sales and, what consumers want and what consumers will wear to work and what consumers can wear 16 times. Where Nigeria is for statements. It is for statements. It is like the va, the voom. It is for maximalists. But I will say this, it has range. If you are a minimalist, you can get minimalist pieces here
definitely.
in Nigeria. If you like streetwear, you can get streetwear here in Nigeria. I mean, it's just the range is incredible. There's so many global elements while also it is so Nigeria in a way that feels, I know that I am witnessing something great. I know that I'm witnessing something beautiful that I've only actually seen covered, in Vogue, Marie Claire Nigeria. Like I've seen it covered, but to be here, it's just magical, to be at the tents, even seeing people like in the audience, what the people are wearing, I'm gagging. Like it just sparks my creative juice. And also I have to shout out the talent here. Not just the designers, not just the designs, not just the people who attend Fashion Week, but like the videographers.
Yeah.
Hey, the photographers, the editing. When they put on my Legos filter, I said, oh, I need you to come to New York with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like the talent is so unreal here and it is so incredible and it makes you want to pay. The makeup artists, like the nail techs, the hair, like it's just it's addictive.
I saw your Thursday Legos is
addictive. I said, let me get out of here. This life is addictive. It will have you thinking. It's addictive.
Yeah. But how do you think African fashion is shaping global fashion conversations?
And I know you mean that in a positive way, but we're going to stir it up a little bit.
Yeah, please.
They're stealing. They're stealing, just like they stole the people and the oil. They are stealing the fashions. I'm seeing it. There was a piece, I won't name the brand, and I could have swore it was this Nigerian brand. And someone tagged another brand that shows at New York Fashion Week. And I know I saw that 3 years ago. And so there has to be some gatekeeping. There has to be some curation. There has to be something very careful. I don't know what it is. But the world likes to look upon Africa for inspiration and then go do it and make millions of dollars and then rob the continent, the people, the artists, the designers, the designs. Yeah. The designers will die and not be able to bury themselves because they put all of their heart into their art. And then another designer, a fashion house in Europe will go make that 10 times over and then make millions of dollars. And so that is the part that worries me a little bit about it, is that I think there is so much inspiration. My audience is so drawn to it. My audience wants to buy. And that's part of the reason why I come, to make sure they understand, like, this is a real designer. This is a real person. They really made this. This design was made on this continent. These are the people. This is what you're supporting. This is what it means. This is why it takes 16 days to make. It's not ASOS. It's not Zara. It's not going to be there in 24 hours. This is what this means. And this is why you can make this your birthday dress. This is why you can wear this for work. This is why you can wear this to your event. But I do worry. I'm not going to lie. I do worry.
And, now I want to transition into your life as an influencer, but more from the lens of being vulnerable, right? I think you're one of the few YouTubers that I watch every other day. I'm like, where are the women in their 30s just talking about life? Like, it's hard to find those type of influencers. So I'm curious, what inspired you to start sharing? But also, do you have boundaries around it? Like what you share and don't share?
Yeah. I was apprehensive at first. As an elder millennial, it's like you kind of cringe because you don't know how much you should share. And then, I have my mother, she's sending me Jesus memes on WhatsApp, and she's telling me that, the people are going to know where my rooms are. They're going to rob me if I show, And so I went into it being very apprehensive. But then I said, I'm going to treat it like a diary, right? Because that's what a vlog is, right? And so that's what I'm going to do. And it's not about showing every single thing. But there are things that I don't show. Like, I won't show my bedroom. I don't know. That feels so intimate. There's certain parts of my house I won't show. But first of all, it's dirty, you're not going to drag me. I'm a person. I didn't clean it. So you can imagine it. And that's the end of it. And then there are things that I don't show for safety reasons. But I just want people to feel seen, I want people to understand that we're all wrestling with so many things, and you're not alone in this world, and you're not isolated. And I'm not some grand person. I'm dealing with things just like everyone else. And I think that was my motivation. And that's why it's working out for me.
And so now I actually want to ask you, speaking on vulnerability, a reflective question, right?
Yeah.
So I write a lot about timeline grief and specifically grieving the life that you thought you had. And it could be different aspects of your life. What is a timeline that you grieve on, and how did it turn you into the person you are today?
I think I'm grieving timeline now because I'm grieving the speed in which I moved. I moved way too fast, and I didn't take in the flowers, and I didn't celebrate the wins. I celebrated my birthday for the first time 2 years ago. I just was on to the next. And I think being an empty nester is just, you're just left with your thoughts. And my husband works so much. He's gone for work. And so I'm in the house like, hello. You know, it's an echo. And so you're just forced to deal with it. And I've just had to sit with myself. And I had an imagination for my 20s. I had imagination for my 30s. I had imagination for my 60s, but I have no imagination for my 40s. I don't even think I thought about 40s. For some reason, I thought I was gonna have a child and then I was gonna retire at 60, and I was gonna magically be 60, even though I was 40 years in between. But you know what I'm saying? There's no conversation. Nobody is sitting down talking to you about it. Nobody is saying, oh, this is what you should expect. And it's like I've left my career. I'm in this new journey, and I'm like, I'm here too soon. My girlfriends can't travel, and they can't just, you know. And so I'm going to Turks and Caicos. I'm like, yay, I'm in Turks and Caicos, but I'm all by myself, you know. And then I call somebody, and I'm breastfeeding, you know. And so it's just I'm grieving now because I just didn't have an imagination for what this would be like. You know, sometimes I'm Googling what to expect in your 40s. Because I'm like, what's going on? And now I'm like, well, now I need to Google what to expect in the 50s. Because I'm like, how long is this going to go? Because it's almost like they tell you to work, build a family, and then magically you're going to be in your 60s. You're going to retire, and you're going to travel, and then you're going to wait for your grandkids, and then you're going to die. But it's 20 years in between that, and there's no imagination for it.
Do you feel like influencing is going to be in that gap?
I'm taking it one day at a time, but I do know that I am outgrowing aspects of even influencing. And I know there's something else for me. And that may be an evolution. That might be a sophistication, right? That might be a growth of a different platform. That might be growth in a different way. That might be going from new media to formal media, right? Like, I don't know what that means. That might be legacy building in the form of a brand, not just myself as a brand, but like a product on a shelf, you know? And what does it mean to pour my soul into that as a baby, right? My husband's like, what about a baby? Now, come on now.
Do you mean me well?
Right. And the answer is no, he doesn't. Because I honestly would. I love kids. But it is the gap. If I had a kid, even with 9 months pregnant, if I would be closer to my own child than my child is to my next child.
Yeah.
Come
on now.
I would be explaining that all day.
But I wanted to go back to the timeline grief because, you know, we had a guest on earlier, and he had said that one thing he was very grateful for was he was always in the moment. He would always smell the roses. He would always slow down to do that. The reason why I'm saying to you is I feel like I can relate more to you, which is like, I just kept on going. Like, I'm like, what's the next train stop? What's the next bus stop? Like, the only thing I can recognize is just keep moving. And then I think I've gone to that stage in life now where I've slowed down. And now I'm like, oh man, I should have enjoyed that more. Yeah. Or I should have slowed down for that. And then there is the part where you have to also learn to forgive yourself for all the times and the scarcity that drove all of that, right? What is that? What of those reflections look like for you?
Well, I'm reflecting just now. You're telling me to reflect. I agree with you. I've had to forgive myself for the decisions I made out of fear, for the decisions I made out of scarcity. If I made good money, when I made my $100,000 salary, I said, oh, it's a fluke. I have to work even harder to maintain it. And then it's like 10 years go by and you're still thinking it's a fluke. Well, at some point, you have to believe in God. You know, at some point, you have to believe that God took you this far. Yes, make sure that you're securing, make sure that you are stable, make sure that you are doing what you need to do to maintain your life. But they're not just going to pull the rug from up under you. And so it's exercising a muscle every day, because I grew up in a home like this. It's the foundation of my identity. It's to work. And then the idea of resting feels like laziness. And so I've had to unpack that over and over again. I mean, almost daily.
And it does damage to a lot of us as Africans and Black people, because we're storing a lot of that trauma and a lot of that, you know, burden upon us. And so even when it's time to like maybe go on a vacation or go on a break, you're not even able to relax and rest into it. You
relax for one day and then you're like, oh, let me get some content. Because I've traveled all this way, I need to, and then you change into 16 outfits because you got to get the content. Then you're mad at the husband because the content don't look good, and now you're like, well, it wasn't worth it. And he's like, I thought we were gonna relax, and you're like, how can I relax? I need my content. My husband's like, I thought you were gonna relax.
Like, what's going on?
Well, now I've seen the backdrop, and it goes with my outfit.
Actually, but you know what I want to circle back into is, what parts of influencing do you think you've outgrown?
The industry is very ageist.
Yeah.
Specifically beauty and the fashion industry. It's so ageist. They're constantly looking for the next best young thing. And they're looking for oftentimes lifestyle creators who are just like, come with me, day in my life. You know, it's always about this very just like superficial thing. And it's just, I just feel like, you know, I don't have to put myself through that. It's not necessary. I am who I am. I've been who I have been. And I've done the things that I've done. And so I've outgrown the need to be on the scene for every little thing just to stay relevant. I have my community. I trust my community. If they don't like it, maybe they didn't see it, or they don't like it. They didn't like it because they don't like it. And I'll try again. But not because I've been replaced, or, you know, there's this identity crisis that can come with influencing if you're not sure of yourself. And for me, there's a beauty in becoming a content creator in your 30s. You know, is that you are full, you have arrived in some ways. It's not without insecurities, but I just don't feel the need to play into a lot of those games always.
Yeah.
And there's also, I think, having had a 401k and have it, amen, you know, and some financial security, I don't feel the need to be as thirsty. You know, it's a hunger, and then there is a thirst to constantly be on the scene for things that don't mean you well, that can actually damage you and harm you. Yeah. And so I've outgrown that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we had this conversation a lot about just she said, you know. Yeah. And I know for me, I was telling you that on my journey, I remember last year I had to leave my management because they basically were like, they gave me this like 16-page plan of how you're going to be a beauty influencer. And I said, yes, I'm beautiful. And yes, I love makeup, but it's not for me. You know, I love writing. I love how it strikes a chord. I see how it impacts people. And I had to make a huge pivot and a huge sacrifice, right? So I also feel like, I hope this conversation we're having will also get influencers to really think, do you got to be in beauty?
Yeah, there's multiple ways, but the industry does struggle with substance. You know that.
Yeah.
This industry struggles with substance. But when you're doing media, when you're doing formal media, like this platform, it pays, it rewards you more. It is more rewarding. And so sometimes you have to use social media as a launching pad into formal media. Yeah. Because otherwise they will continue to pigeonhole you into very specific industries and ways, because it's all they know. And they haven't evolved because they struggle with substance. They don't want women of substance.
What is one truth about America no one wants to admit?
I've said it all. Have I not said it all? One truth about America that no one wants to admit. It has the best PR in the entire world, even better than Beyonce. And you know Beyonce has the best PR. The United States PR, when I come to other countries, everybody wants to come to America. They're like, oh, America, I'm waiting on my visa. I'm coming to study in America. I'm just shocked. I'm like, are they crazy? The food gives you acne. The police give you stress. The taxes. Tell them about the taxes. I'm like, are they? What is going on?
When you see them cut, I remember when I first paid 6 figures and I saw half of it just whoosh.
Hey, the people are like, oh, I'm coming to America to make $100,000 US. And you get that check. And you're like, where's the 100?
Wait, actually, remember I told you?
Where is it?
I remember I told him when we first started dating about California taxes. I was like, babe, you know how much they take? And he said, what?
It's going to be $39 for Trump and his boys. And then you got to pay 11% for the state. And then you got to pay 6% and then you got to pay Social Security. And then you say, I'm about to sue somebody. Where's my money? I've bought things expecting this money. And a lot of people don't realize America runs on a credit system.
Yeah.
It's all credit. So you can buy it, but you have to pay it back. Yeah. So they see people with even houses. People don't realize that. When around the world, most houses, you have to go in with cash in your hand. And so when they're outside of America, they think they're so poor because they can't buy a big house like Americans. They don't own their house. The bank owns their house. They're paying it for 30 years.
Yeah.
People don't understand that. So they dream about coming to America. I'm like, and then they come and they can't understand why their cousin who's going abroad is so depressed. Because it's depressing. Are you okay? Like you have to work for everything.
Every single thing.
People think, we were talking about this last night. They're like, you think, the rent, the rent is $1,000, so you thinking, that's everything. And then comes the water bill.
The electricity.
And then the electricity. You start cutting off the lights because you're like, you start tallying up the 100,000 and it's just deducting
the car note.
Paycheck to
like,
paycheck.
Oh my God, I don't have no money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most people live paycheck to paycheck in America.
I don't think people realize that because it looks good, but it's a credit system.
You know, it's funny because I want to expand on this because I do feel I've been feeling a shift like over the last 2 years, going back to, and maybe it's also this whole resting thing, but capitalism does come at a cost, right?
Yes, it does.
To your body, to your mind. And we had a book we both read this year called The 5 Types of Wealth, right? Mm-hmm. Financial wealth, spiritual wealth, financial wealth, mental wealth, physical wealth, social wealth, and time wealth, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is like you're making trade-offs. Most people prioritize financial wealth, right? But you don't think about the time you still have to spend with your daughter, with your mom, with your dad, how much time you have left to spend with them, but also the trade-offs you're making throughout this whole journey. And I was thinking, I feel like some people are getting burnt out from capitalism and then asking themselves, like, how do I unplug from this rat race, right? And sometimes the answer might lie in moving to Africa. But there's this, like you said, PR thing of, well, how can I be somebody who wants to leave here to go back when there's so many people who want to leave where they're at to come here? So have you had any of those sort of discussions? Have you felt like the weight of that in your interactions and seen what capitalism is really doing to folks in America?
Well, they say the true American dream is outside of America. That's the saying. The true American dream is to make your money in the West and spend it on the continent.
Yeah.
That's what they say. The quality of life here, if you have money, you can imagine any life that you want.
Yeah.
Which comes there's an analysis that can happen that for people who are much smarter than me around Nigerian politics and everything. around all the ways that is detrimental to people who are multi-generationally impoverished in Nigeria. But when you have US dollars and you come here, now all of a sudden you can see the money. But there you can't see it.
Yeah.
And for people who are on the continent who want to go to America, let them see. They will be running back. Everybody is because it will drain you. It will drain you. And I think the elders were onto something when they went for school and they went to work and they took advantage of being bicontinental and they understood the value of being bicontinental, of making sure that you can move through the world with some of your Western privileges and access to the West, and also making sure you kept a pulse on what's happening at home, building your home here and retiring here so that you don't have to rest in the hustle and bustle of New York City or DC or even Miami. But like you can come here where it's warm and you can have good food. And I think there are so many people in our generation who are now understanding that.
Yeah.
I think the true wealth for me is being a global citizen, is making sure I'm accessing markets that benefit me in ways that will continue to benefit my lineage for generations to come. And I truly believe that, the true ticket is multiple passports. It's going to have to be.
I don't think Black people are supposed to be in the cold.
I don't think so.
That's
either.
my theory.
I don't think so. People don't understand. You feel it in your bones.
Yeah.
Once that cold hits you, you feel it in your bones. A friend last night was talking about how when she first came to America, she was stunned because she had just a little duster coat because she was thinking, oh, it's cold. She said she was wrapped for 4 days. They were like, are you okay? She was like, no. My soul is cold. People don't understand that. Cold. When that wind blows and it's negative.
Yeah, and it's like a...
Hey, when the temperature is negative.
Ain't nothing going.
That's why even when I schooled, I went to Florida. I said I can't do the cold.
Yeah,
I've always been in California, so the snow wasn't my thing. It wasn't until I started coming to DC to see her. I'm like, you out here shoveling snow?
Exactly.
For real? Nah.
Hey, a whole lady. My God,
it's crazy.
I want to talk about why aunties are so important to African history. Aunties represent curators of the African experience, and oftentimes they have been unacknowledged. They have literally held our archives before there were archives. They were literally institutions before we had institutions. They held so many important cultural artifacts, such as the way we braid our hair, the recipes of our cookings. They represent abundance. There's literally a reason why we call an African culture rich aunties. And we believe that with partnering with Anthony, we're able to showcase this type of history through art. So to connect to African history and get a piece of the Anthony and Afropolitan collection called Auntie, make sure to click the link in the description. And this is your way you can support our channel.
Quick break. You know how we're always talking about sending money back home? The diaspora sent home last year $20 billion just in Nigeria alone, right? A lot of that money goes to partying, Ashobi, maybe building a house that you only visit twice a year. Meanwhile, some of us are in Lagos watching Tesla stock go up 15% and not being able to have access to it. I don't think that that's right. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that we've partnered with HISA. With HISA, you can sit on your couch and invest in US stocks, crypto, ETFs in the Kenyan and the Nigerian market, right? And no longer you sitting there and watching other people get rich off investing and you're not able to get access to it because some brokerage firm in the US thinks that your VPN is suspicious activity. They've partnered with Alpaca that allows them to be licensed, legit, and you don't have to trust somebody on a WhatsApp group saying, send me money and I'll invest. Download HISA, use code Afropolitan. Stop letting your money sit there while you argue about Naira on Twitter. All right, back to it.
You know how every week we sit down with people who've done it, people who've built, people who've led movements, people who've created culture. What if you could do more than just listen to them? That is why we built Convo by Afropolitan. On Convo, you're able to book one-on-one video calls with in-demand experts from Africa and the diaspora. Go to convo.vip to get access to your next mentor, because sometimes one convo can change your entire path.
So we're now going to move to the rapid fire questions. So the first thing that comes to your mind, just let us know. So the one city that changed your life?
Johannesburg.
I had a feeling it was going to be somewhere there. A Black woman who shaped you.
My mom.
Aww. A quote you live by.
To whom much is given, much is required.
Joy looks like.
Being with my baby.
Freedom feels like.
Being with my baby.
Aww.
My husband and my daughter, I feel free. You know? No lights, no cameras at home. Yeah.
One thing people misunderstand about influencers.
That we just promote things so that we can get a brand deal. No, I really like it. I'm a human being. Can I like this moisturizer?
My skin needs moisturizer.
Like now you have to sometimes I want to share things and I'm like, man, now I gotta go online and say, y'all, this is not a sponsor ad. I just genuinely like this product. If your younger self saw you now, what would she say?
Wow. I think she would be in awe. I didn't have an imagination for the woman I became. I just wanted to survive. When I was a kid, I just wanted to make a little money. I was even scared to ask God for a lot because I thought he was busy. So I said, let me just ask for a little bit. You know, even in my small prayers, I just wanted a little. I asked for a little bit and a little home and a little this and to maybe go to Mexico. So I would say, I think my younger self would be in awe. Yeah.
And then the last question we ask every single guest on the Afropolitan podcast is, who do you want to see in that seat and whose story do you think needs to be told? And this can be anyone in the world.
Anyone in the world. There's a young lady who does PR for Gucci. And she's born and raised in Milan. She's from, but her family is from the Congo. And she's now moved to the US and she's doing PR for Gucci. And I just think she just has such a unique worldview, having lived and experienced and been on 3 continents and also working for a heritage house. A heritage house that has gone through transitions. I think that would just be such an interesting story to tell.
Hey, what's her name?
I'll tell you later.
Okay, cool.
I don't know if she wants me to say. She's like, oh, now everybody's trying to get into the Gucci show. now they know I'm the PR.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
But
true,
on the
true,
side,
true.
on the side.
I think she would be great. Do you know? I know you know Chi. Everybody's name is Chi. I'm in Nigeria, but
Which Chi?
the real Chi. Is
Okay,
her.
the real Chi.
But I love her so much. You know, she's doing this like reality show style.
Yeah, I've been seeing that
And
content.
it's like, it just reminds me of this show, which made me want to come to Ghana, actually. It was a YouTube series called African City.
I
Yeah.
know it.
It's one of my favorite shows. And I was led by the fashion
Yeah.
and the brunch places. So every time I go to this brunch place, my husband's like, oh, she's in her African City. And I just love the show. They took it offline and they donated. And I donated to like keep it funding. And I was just praying that it kept going. And it went one more season. But I love the way she's doing it. And I think it's just, she's telling this global story and these like, you know, it's like Sex in the City bicontinental. And I just think it's so fresh and it's so fun. And it's just, you know, 30s girlies, you know, looking for our man, you know, soft live shopping. And I'm just tuned in.
Okay.
And so I would love to see her.
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Tanika.
Thank you so much, Tanika.
Thank you both. This was so lovely.